it's kind of a tough art scene. Like, I mean, if I had to analyze it in retrospect, I would say there's not enough. There is some success there and stuff, but I don't think there's enough. I mean, Berlin's not that different, but
Yeah.
there's not enough. So it's very kind of elbowy, like very competitive and everything. So nobody's really looking. I mean, people do get breaks and people do, quote unquote, make it. But I didn't really have much luck. I really tried. And so Berlin felt like a place where I could just be me and people liked it. It wasn't like, oh, you're the weird guy talking about the weird things, which is what I talk about on the show, but that kind of talk wasn't very appreciated out in the circles that I was in Canada. And that could have been totally my fault and all that sort of thing, but it just never really worked for me. So at least out here, I felt there's a value being into culture and being into all these things is valued and prized. And, it's not that important in Berlin, like your job. It's more like, what are you into? What are you trying to do? And so that was, so it was a good fit out here. It's a free place in that respect. A lot of people like that about Berlin, and you forget about it sometimes living here for a while. But when you ever go on vacation, people then, including myself, you remember why you like Berlin so much. Like, it's pretty chill,
Yeah. That's very freeing. Like I don't know many metropolis cities that I hear of people from that are just less focused on what you do and more focused on what you're interested in. That's like, I wonder where that come from. Have you ever dove deep into figuring out what kind of gave birth to a culture like that? Or have you just loved it and embraced it and stuck around?
Of course I've analyzed it. Yeah, no, it's sort of like, the way I would sort of assess that is, I think it's because Canada is a fairly young country, for example, and I can't speak. I think actually the U.S. is a little bit different in this regard, but Canada's a fairly young country, so there's not like a several century old tradition of the arts of it being kind of at the center of the cultural life and this appreciation and super famous historians going all the way back to ancient Greece. So I think it's a little bit different kind of being on the continent of Europe because it's understood on a really for centuries, if not millennia, 2 millennia, that, ideas are kind of the real currency and kind of, things, it's the real game, so to speak. And I just think that depth just simply, it's just Canada's just too young, I'd argue, culturally, and nothing against it. It was a great place to grow up and everything. But if you ask me to analyze why that is, so I think it's in that respect. So it creates a different kind of cultural values. Whereas in Canada, maybe it was more important, to frankly, like make a lot of money. And, that's your status. The way that status is measured is a lot different, in a city like Berlin and, compared to, say, Toronto. It's just,
So it's interesting. So it's really like a different model of success, of status within social circles. Whereas if you can have deeper conversations about the arts or about things that you are interested in, you tend to have a wider group of supporters and friends in Berlin. Whereas if you're in Toronto, it's like, yeah, but like, how much money are you making?
Not so directly, but yes.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Keeping up with the Joneses. I could say at least in Atlanta, it's much of the same. I think there's some very cool cultural history in the city of Atlanta that leads to some very interesting artistic communities. But for the most part, if you go to like the suburbs, it is, what car are you driving? What circle are you doing? What have you done with your career? It's not, hey, do you make art on the weekends, right? Do you want to go to shows? I struggle to find people to go to galleries with me. I really do. I have to make new friends.
It's true. It's kind of like a big unspoken story, I would argue, actually, is it can be quite difficult to actually find, friends sometimes in some of these North American cities. And, it wasn't easy. And I'm a pretty social person. So here it's like it's much more effortless for me. And and yeah, it's kind of an interesting whole, you could have a whole like anecdotal cultural discussion on the differences between the two cultures. Big picture, I would say it's just there's more of an emphasis. Like a lot of the people that I know would be considered, quote unquote losers, who I like a lot and respect, but in North American culture, they'd be like, well, this person is unemployed and they don't do anything, and he wears crazy glasses and he goes to all the art shows and drinks drinks the free wine. I think it's hilarious, and I see, but like that person might not be at all respected and probably won't do very well in a city like Toronto,
Yeah.
But,
I guess, for some reason, this is what pops in my head. A socialite in North America is someone who's rich and influences people and everybody wants to be around him. Whereas a socialite, that sounds like in Berlin, is just someone who is really cool to be around because they can have really interesting conversations, and it has nothing to do with the material things that they bring to the conversation.
Yeah, just to illustrate the point, like I have a friend. I don't think he'd mind me mentioning his name. His name is Christopher Winter, and he's an artist, and he's doing quite well. It has occasionally his paintings are at Sotheby's, whatever. And he kind of blew up in 2007, 2008. He's had a ton of articles. He showed me once his portfolio of articles. Anyways, he blew up in around 2007, 2008, and he bought a sports car in Berlin. He bought an apartment. And him having a sports car in Berlin, especially back then, he was like, it was totally humiliating. Like, I mean,
Really?
nobody thought you were cool back then. You were like the douchey guy in the sports car. So that's Berlin, right? It's not very materialistic, and it kind of like can be to a fault, but anyway, like people don't dress up here. If I was to go to the bar in a blazer, for instance, like I would stand out unless it was like a really fancy place, and it'd be like, there's the loser with the blazer, not joking. Nobody wears a suit in Berlin. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit. You will see suits here and there, older guys, but if I was walking around in a suit, I would just be attracting trouble, if anything.
That is so interesting.
It's pretty funny.
It is. It's like mind bending to learn the different types of cultures. Like you get so set in the culture you're in, you just kind of accept it as true, right? Like you're just like, all right, well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go to the birthday parties. We're going to think this thing. We're not going to go to, galleries. Like I'm gonna have to go out of the way. Like I was at, just like little anecdotal thing, I was at Shabbat dinner. I go to Shabbat dinner every Friday, and I was like, hey guys, there's the gallery that's doing a sick opening, and I'm like, no, we're good. Everybody's like, you go check it out for us and let us know. And so I went by myself. It's just that is the life.
It's it's funny. And I'd even just add to the point, like it's trickier to go to galleries by yourself, I found in Toronto, just because like now I kind of been in Berlin long enough where I'm probably going to know someone if it's a bigger opening, or I can check the Twitter, see where certain people are, or on Instagram, see where people are and kind of catch up with them, so it's a lot I can totally go out by myself, and most of the time, and even if I'm by myself, I almost found it an easier thing. I remember going to LA to art openings by myself, and it's just like, I didn't meet anybody. I tried, but it wasn't very easy.
Oh God, definitely not LA.
You
aren't in our group, sir.
I guess, so it's all, I learned the hard way on everything, and including that,